I found out that y'all are doing the looks for Padmavat. I was like, this combination makes so much sense.
Mr. Bansari told me one thing, a fact that he said, you get an opportunity like this once in a lifetime. It's up to you what you make of it.
2026, what colors are we going to see?
I am predicting a lot of pastel pinks.
What are the best sleeve patterns for, say, a bride with like a really broad shoulder?
Our sleeves are very important. In fact, if you've closely looked at Padmavat, you'll see Deepika wearing like a red and a blue side and the sunscreen.
What should you look out for when you're picking a lehenga?
A lot of my brides from Bombay, they do not like voluminous stuff. They like flowy. In Delhi, it's not like that. Delhi people like volume. The gatherings are bigger. They want to feel special. India is so culturally rich. The craftsmanship we have, I think you don't get it anywhere. So many international brands have actually kept the secret of where they're getting their outfits manufactured. And now it's time to actually come out, own your craftsmanship and tell the world it's us guys. It's us who've been doing this.
5 mistakes that they make that you recommend that they stop. Welcome to another episode of Hot Expert, and this time we have with us Rimple from Rimple and Harpreet because she is going to give us a bridal 101. And I have to say this, my dream wedding lehenga is from their 2019 collection. Pata nahi kab pehrungi, but I know that's what I want.
That's so sweet of you, and I'm sure you're going to be a bride soon.
I don't see it happening with all the dates that I'm going on, but it's not working out. Which is why I want to start off with. What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind with your brand, with your designs?
Well, we've been constantly working towards one goal where kind of protected the culture, the history we belong to, and we're trying to always revive old, long lost techniques of embroidery, trying to revive forgotten textiles and making the modern bride believe in our rich culture. We've been the custodians of probably taking people to an experience of historic drama.
Your work is rooted in archival Indian textiles and in the pre-independence craftsmanship of specifically the pre-independence Punjab.
Yes.
So what pulls you towards that era apart from your own roots, of course?
You as a child always develop what you see, and it's very important from where you belong. You pick up habits in the childhood, and I belong to a family who was migrants from Pakistan. I have learned the language, how they used to speak. I have seen my grandma dress in a particular style, very modest, very pretty. So I've grown up with this culture, and that's what reflects in mine Harpreet's outfits, because we both belong to a family where our ancestors have come from Pakistan and they are very deep rooted in history, very religious, spiritual people, and yet flamboyant and dressy. So probably the initial taste or initial building up was from family. See those old albums, whichever we preserved. There are not many, but I just can't help looking at the beauty and the modesty my grandparents carried.
Do you design a piece with the storytelling of sorts?
Well, as designers, I've always maintained that before becoming designers, we are travelers, collectors. And what happens is, as a traveler, you not only travel, but you actually collect stories, memories. And in our clothes, we're not a designer who's going to follow trends, but actually take a very strong narrative. Like sometimes I wonder that sometimes my clothes are so timeless that you can actually pass on and wear them for decades, not few years, but decades.
I know you do your research with museums and studying the culture and the history, but what more do you do, and how important is this rigorous research for your sort of every collection that you make?
A lot of young generation, I know I'm not against you guys, but I'm just talking to you because I see a lot of my young staff, colleagues, younger designers. I mean, don't hold me for it, but the Pinterest has become the new Google. They're always on Pinterest. That's fine. You want to make your mood boards, but trust me, there's more than Pinterest. There are so many textiles which you can study. There are museums you have to visit. As a designer, you have to actually think deeper than Pinterest. There is so much to study. India is such a vast, diverse culture. I mean, you go to so many places. You go to Banaras, you see how the weave is done. The textiles are so rich. We are deeply rooted in history. Try and take out time and visit the museums India has to offer.
You know, today the looks that we go for, whether it's a wedding guest or a bride, they're usually leaning more towards the trendy cuts and the more skimpy cuts. But when you look at you go back in time, you see the traditional pieces that are a little more conservative, but they are so sexy.
Yes, of course. You know, they always say that, yes, when you show less, the modesty is the way to beauty. With raw language and a raw bride, you know, we will never compromise on culture. That's something which we don't believe in. Like, it's not that you won't look trendy or you won't look sexy, but trust me, you try my outfits, you will feel sexy from inside.
So tell me, which historical motifs and crafts do you think deserve like a major comeback in 2025?
With us, you will see a lot of bird and animal motifs. I personally like them. And if you look around in my lehengas, the peacock is primarily one of the most used motive with us. And, you know, I'll tell you a little story about it. Like, a lot of people ask me that, where do you get this motive language from? So while I was researching for my film work, which was Padmavat, which was my first Bollywood project I ever did. And I mean, I can't thank the universe and Mr. Bansali for it. It has actually made me learn so many things. And while we were doing our research work, we understood what happened was, back in the day, in the ancient times, women used to sew their own clothes. Like, the bridal outfit was mostly done by themselves. Like, they used to take years, whether it was the Afghani women or the Indian women, you know, they used to sew their own, they used to do their own embroideries. This is like ancient, I'm talking like years and years back. They used to have a small window where they used to sit by, sing together, and probably stitch together. And what they used to stitch is what they used to see. So when you look outside the window, they used to see the birds, the peacocks. You know, there's so many birds chirping. The peacock used to dance, and they used to there, and then they used to lift those motifs and probably sew them on the clothes.
But tell me, what colors over the years do you believe have proven to actually be timeless? And what shades do you think are going to define the upcoming bridal season?
So India, like I said, is a diverse, culturally rich country. And even if you visit several states, you will see the bridal colors change. When you go towards UP, there's a different shade of red. There is a different shade of orange, yellow also. So it's not that they weren't in trend back in the day. It's just that now with social media, you see a lot of other colors. With Indians going abroad for destination weddings, where the climatic conditions are such that you don't want to wear a very deep red, definitely pastels were introduced. And it's not that they weren't there. So when you see a Bengali bride, she's dressed in ivory and a red border, or a Gujarati bride would always wear ivory. So it's not that anything has changed, it's just it's redefined. And definitely, as a bride, when you walk in, there are choices. There are multiple choices. Salmon pink and pastel pinks being one of them for destination weddings. Red, classic, with pomegranate red, to a deep red, to a burgundy. There are certain kind of reds which we offer. And I do a lot of gold bridal outfits.
क्या लगता है आपको कि 2026 में what colors are we going to see for bride?
I think 2026 is a lot of summer brides. So we're going to see a lot of more pastel colors. And I am predicting a lot of pastel pinks. If you see a lot of brides going towards Jaipur, Udaipur for a very royal feast, I think that's where you see a lot of reds, deeper shades, jewel tones. That's what they prefer because, like you said, everything has to be Instagrammable worthy. So the picture has to be perfect.
I want to know your experience with Sanjay Veena Bansali, which is, of course, iconic.
So that needs a separate podcast altogether, like a separate hour.
Also, because I love Sanjay Leela Bansali's grandeur.
Who doesn't love him? Who doesn't? Show me one person who doesn't love Mr. Bansali.
I mean, I love the fact that the attention to detail. Like, when I found out that y'all are doing the looks for Padmavat, I was like, this combination makes so much sense. Because I know you guys as designers pay so much attention to the details. But tell me, what did sort of designing for his world, his films, teach you about detail and grandeur that that you also carry into your bridal collections even today?
Mr. Bansali told me one thing when we met, and I think I just can't get over that. And that was probably, it remained with me forever while we were designing for Padmavat, was a fact that he said, you get an opportunity like this once in a lifetime. It's up to you what you make of it. And that's what always was on the back of my mind playing. It was such a big chance for us to actually show the world that what we are capable of. And I hope we've lived up to that expectations. What we like, I hope we've created history by designing for him once for Padmavat and the second time was for Hira Mandi. But one thing about Mr. Bansali is that that man has given his life to cinema and he knows so much about even the history, textiles, the grandeur. He is a man who would actually dive deep into history and do the correct thing. And that's why we all admire, that's why we love his cinema, because he's so honest. And that's what he taught me, is to remain honest to your work.
And you're also doing Raman, which is an ambitious production for our time.
Yes.
So I want to know, what sort of research and aesthetics are you focusing on to shape whatever looks that you're shaping for the...
I had a little conversation with the producer, which is Namit. And I told him, I don't know, Namit. I just feel that India needs this. The children, the people who are watching this telecast also, I think we all need this. I think it's time where we are going back to our historical roots and where the generation, the young generation wants to connect with our Sanatan Dharam. There is a constant quest, I feel, and I have seen it. There's a shift happening, and I think the time is so right.
But I want to understand, in terms of the looks that you're curating for the film, what kind of research, what kind of aesthetics and color tones are you moving, sort of moving towards and working on?
Actually, it is in your DNA, what you've learned over time. I know this, the only Ramayana and Mahabharata we all remember, at least my generation remember, was back in the day when I was a little child. Because you cannot play with it too much. You have to remain in a certain boundary for a mythological project where you are actually dressing up literally the god and the goddesses. So you will see the old ancient influences for sure. The silhouettes are going to be very classic, what you have imagined or what you have seen. But leave it for it to come and see what we've done.
But tell me, designing for Ramayana has those influences and that research also spilled into any of your upcoming collection?
You will be surprised that just now, I won't tell the groom's name, that you will see him soon. He's also he's very well known for his kathas. So I don't want to give the name, but I was just talking to someone and I said, I see a comeback of dhotis for sure. You will see a lot of grooms wearing them.
Oh my God, now I'm actually excited. Now I actually want to move on to conversations about bridal shopping and decision making, which is, I think, the toughest part of being a bride.
Yeah, probably. And sometimes not. If I feel today's woman is so clear in her head. She knows what she wants, and probably a lot of these girls have actually made up their mind before they even walk into the store.
I mean, I have.
There you go.
How early should a bride start her bridal wear journey, especially if you're looking at a fully custom made piece?
Like I said, customization does take time because it's couture. And couture essentially means something which is developed for you, and which a designer and a client sit down and decide what they want. For that kind of an experience, you should at least have 3 months in hand. Otherwise, for color changes and for little bit tweaking, we let you have the liberty within 45 to 2 months, 45 days to 2 months.
जब हम fittings करने जाते हैं as bride, of course your body is changing, your stress levels are different, your diet is changing. So what are the mistakes that you think as a designer that you've seen brides make when they're doing their fitting?
Not really, I would not call them mistakes, but this sudden urge to lose weight and then they suddenly become so skinny, that causes a bit of a problem, because as Indian women, as Indian figures, we are full figures. Like, that's how we're supposed to be. But when they become too skinny, I think it's very hard for me to actually do the fittings with them. And then I request them to at least don't diet so much. Go a healthy lifestyle, get a glow on your skin, drink a lot of water, but remain in shape. Don't lose your curves.
But apart from that, what do you think, what are the mistakes they could be making otherwise in terms of their fittings that they can avoid?
We take fairas without our footwear, sandals, or whatever they wear, and these girls want to wear very high heels. So we have to actually find a sweet balance between when you're in your heels of the length of the outfit vis-a-vis when you're taking the fairas. So you don't have to topple and fall because it's too lengthy, the outfit. That's what we try to. We have very trained stylists who are working with us. We have very trained people who help you at the store. So we kind of help you with the length, the accurate length of your outfit.
Okay, also for brides on a budget,
Okay.
what do you recommend? What's the best way of spending on couture? Like, do you think they should be getting like a designer blouse, or should they get a designer lehenga or a designer dupatta? What's the best way to sort of budget it?
If you are working on a budget, then I would suggest that first look into your mom's or grandmom's wardrobe. If you have a classic timeless piece, reuse it, wherein we use some of it and we use another new embroidery fabric to probably match it or go with it. I am not against quiet luxury as long as your culture is not compromised. I am not against it. And a bride on a budget could actually use some beautiful old fabrics that we get. Sometimes reusing them, that's the trick.
But Acha, tell me, what are the sort of, when brides go shopping and they're looking for their bridal lehengas, what are the 5 things that they overlook, or like 5 mistakes that they make that you recommend that they stop?
Okay, don't hate me for this, but don't let the noise bother you. Like, don't listen to everyone. Don't keep sending your image to like everybody and asking, okay, is this outfit good? Is this outfit bad? Listen to your heart. Set on a tone, what color tone you want. Try some outfit and feel. Your gut is going to tell you that this is the outfit for you. Another thing is choose wisely. You're going to get married once. This is going to be your moment, your day. So take your time, take a deep breath. Don't choose while you're in a hurried or a hush situation. Do a little research, think of what you want, and then choose wisely.
What should you look out for when you're picking a lehenga? Because can sometimes, heavy embroidery can make a lehenga heavy. Can hota hai to there's so much ghera that how do you sort of walk?
See, now the only thing here is it's a very personal choice question. We have options of both minimalistic and maximum. So there has been a trend where I've seen a lot of my brides from Bombay. They do not like voluminous stuff. They like flowy and less can. Whether in Delhi, it's not like that. Delhi people like volume. The gatherings are bigger. They want to feel special. More the ostentatious the outfit, the more confident they feel. So here, there's a very personal choice question, what you've told me. We offer them both. So it's a bride who decides. She's the boss. She's going to decide what she wants to wear.
What do you think are the most flattering necklines for women of different bust size, like smaller bust, bigger bust, or like say broad shoulders?
According to me, I think for a structural shape, it's a sweetheart neck, which is like one of the oldest necks. I'm sure you've heard your mums and a lot of master Gs of your moms discussing sweetheart neck, which is like a very old term prevalent. So sweetheart necks are always good for structure. Scoop necks are very good if you want to soften, your upper half or the bust area. Then there is V-neck for an elongated look. So there are various necks for various kind of body shapes.
And for the smaller bust, what kind of neckline would you recommend?
I mean, you can always go in for a scoop neck.
Tell me, what are the best sleeve patterns for, say, a bride with like a really broad shoulder?
There's always a designer's DNA and how they design, and there's a certain pattern with us. Our sleeves are very important. In fact, if you've closely looked at Padmavat, you will see a lot of difference between on the left sleeves, on the right sleeves, there are different colors, which became actually a trend after the movie. You'll see Deepika wearing like a red and a blue side and the sun's green. So this is one trend. Again, it has a historical reference. Like I told you, that how a lot of women used to sew on their own clothing and used to do their own embroideries is how they used to stitch them. And sometimes if the fabric was less, they would just stick on another color, which was trending after Padmavat, and we have actually made for clients and they love it because when you move towards one side, it's a different color of the sleeve and the other side is different. And when you look at the bride or somebody in a sari with different color of sleeves, it's kind of a nice resting point for your eye.
How do you sort of maintain your wedding lehenga?
So, like I said, Janvi, it's an experience altogether, right? From making you choose your outfit to delivering that outfit and explaining you the aftercare. And fortunately, in India, you have a lot of house help and people to help you in your weddings. So it's very easy that we help you maintain the outfit so that the Zardozi is always intact in the condition they are. Definitely do not use direct fragrance and perfumes on it. And there is always a mull cloth given to you in which you have to tie your outfit and keep if you are opting for a Zardozi outfit.
Okay, I need to know this one thing. So, back in the day, my mom used to do this. All her expensive embroidery wale outfits, she used to keep them in a malmal cloth. And then every once in a month or 2 months, she would pull them out and she would put them out in the sun.
Yeah,
for a little bit.
that's an exercise we've learned from, our parents, and we watch them do it because it's generally done to a lot of pashmina shawls. The outfits which are made from animal skin or animal products or things like that. So we've been seeing that trend because it needs to get, you have to have the air coming in because they are preserved in wardrobes for months. So they need a little bit of air. It's not necessarily you do with your lehengas because it'll be very funny that in the sun your lehenga will be like basking to glory.
Okay. So, I also want to talk now about your jewelry collection because that's I was actually exploring your jewelry collection and I saw so much the old school gold jewelry that I've seen on my mom's wedding trousseau. And tell me, what's the thought behind all of that? And I know you love jewelry.
I love jewelry. I love jewelry. And somewhere I feel that there was something which was lacking was the jewelry part of it. Sometimes, when I dress a bride and the final look, because I couldn't help her choose her jewelry or I couldn't provide, I felt that it was my duty to at least suggest. That's where Ra Jewels took birth. And I'm so glad now.
Now this is a very personal question. I've heard this from so many stylists that you should pick your jewelry before you pick your lehenga. What's the right way, Rimple? You have to give me the right answer because I think I can trust you on that.
If your aesthetic is strong and you know what you want, you will not go wrong because you will choose the right jewelry and you will definitely get a right outfit to match it. And choosing jewelry is even more timeless task than clothes because jewelry is something which you want to rewear again and again. So you have to choose jewelry wisely.
What kind of jewelry do you recommend basis the neckline? Because I feel like that also plays into it. So also part of what you do is put together a look which is why you started the jewelry. So what do you recommend for say a sweetheart neckline?
A choker,
For a scoop neckline?
a gulband.
And something with a high neck?
You can, with a high neck also, you can place a long har like a Rani har, or have you heard this term Rani har? Yeah.
I know Rani har.
They are something which looks lovely on like high necks. And especially when your outfit's like not heavy on the top, it's slightly plainer, the blouses are plainer. I think a Rani har looks exquisite.
And tell me, what's that one piece of timeless jewelry that you think every bride needs to invest in?
For me, I think it should be your beautiful Mangal suit.
Because you're wearing that all the time.
Absolutely. I think that's something you should relish because you're going to enjoy wearing it if you love it. India is so culturally rich. The craftsmanship we have, I think you don't get it anywhere. And it's enough like how so many brands, so many international brands have actually kept the secret of where they're getting their outfits manufactured. And now it's time to actually come out, own your craftsmanship and tell the world it's us guys. It's us who've been doing this.
Thank you for doing this and taking time out smack in the middle of wedding season to do this. And so guys, with that, we're done with this. So it's a wrap.
Yay!